Another very useful monitoring tool is the Performance Monitor. Back in my Server Manager, I'm going to click on Tools on the menu bar, and I'm going to scroll down until I get to Performance Monitor. I'm just going to put this in full screen here. This Performance Monitor is actually broken out into 3 parts. Now notice we're in Performance Monitor, it says here, but within it, there's actually Performance itself. Then they have Monitoring Tools, Data Collector Sets, and Reports. But if I expand Monitoring Tools, Performance Monitor is just one of the tools. In the Performance Monitor, I can simply right-click in this graph, and there's an option to add counters. Now, I have in excess of 1,000 counters natively built in, and the counters also grow with the roles and features you install on the operating system. Well, an example of some of my counters. If I expand Processor, I have several individual counters for Processor that can actually be defined in this list. If we scroll up a bit, you'll see I have Network Adapter. I have 35 counters for memory. I actually counted them. So it's 35 counters for memory natively built in. A lot for Hyper-V since that's running on this machine. So this just grows with the operating system. If you were on a domain controller, you would have several counters, actually hundreds of counters for Active Directory. You have counters for DNS, DHCP. The biggest takeaway is that all these counters run in real time. So the counter I have right now is %processor time. That counter is always loaded by default. So this is just giving me, in this, I call it a line graph. It is just giving me, at these different time intervals, giving me my processor time. Now if I click this down arrow here to change the graph type, so this is a line graph we're in now. I can change the layout if I want to view what's normally called a bar graph. So you'll see it just pop up here and there whenever I have some usage. Now they call that a histogram bar, but bar graph is what most people refer to it as. Now, if I don't want to look at the graph, I do have the option for reporting. If I click report, it just gives you the numbers. The biggest takeaway to Performance Monitor is that it is a real-time monitoring tool. So if I'm not actually looking at this when it changes, you would have no idea it happened. So there's no retroactive way to say what happened 30 seconds before I open this tool. If you want any type of logged monitoring, we have data collector sets. A data collector set, if I click on user defined, I can create a new data collector set. I'm going to choose the option to create one manually. Now normally you would name this something like processor usage or CPU usage. I'm just going to say CPU usage percentage. So I'm going to choose next for that while leaving this on manual. The most common option here is create data logs performance counter. What I can do with this is choose any counter that I want. Same list of counters we just saw, but I'm going to choose %processor time. That %processor time is really my CPU usage. The percent of time my processor is actually functioning. So maybe my CPU is at 50% utilization or 85% utilization. This %processor time would actually track that. So I'm going to add that counter and I'm going to choose OK. The sample interval is how often I want my, in this case, my processor time to actually be sampled. I'm going to leave that on 15 seconds. So every 15 seconds it checks my CPU usage. Well, I'm going to choose next, and finish. So I have my counter, the CPU. If I go to the properties of that, a few things I can define. One is the directory. This is going to write all this information that it logs into my system drive, which is down under my C drive, to this perfs logs admin CPU percentage folder. So that's the directory everything will be written into. The schedule tab here lets me define when this is supposed to start. So in the example I have here, I am monitoring processor usage. Well, let's say on my network, or for this machine in particular, the busiest time for the CPU is between 7 a.m. and 10 a.m., that 3-hour window. What I can do on the schedule is add, and I can say I want this counter to start February 13th at 7 a.m. And I'll just change that from PM to AM. It's been decided that maybe I don't want to monitor this every day. I only want to monitor this on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So just 3 days a week, starting at 7 a.m. I'm going to click OK for that. If I go one tab over, the stop condition lets me specify when I want this to actually stop running. Well, I'm just going to enter 3 hours. So this fits our scenario. So 3 hours starts at 7 a.m. This would turn off at 10 a.m. and it's only going to run Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So that would be logged monitoring for us. Same exact counters as we had in the performance monitor, but these just run over a period of time, where in the performance monitor, that was strictly real time when you were looking at the counters themselves. So I'll just say OK for that. Now this counter is stopped. So I would actually have to start this for that process to begin, but that's all that would be required. And again, this is built into all operating systems, client and server.